we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Liz Martin. I'm the photo editor at the Gazette. I am merely here as the room host. Basically, I'm here to make sure that things run smoothly for Gage, who is our moderator. Gage Miskimen is the Marion and Lynn County reporter for the Gazette, and you are in the community development track in the Reinventing Rural Housing session. So this is the last track of the day. I hope you're going to be returning tomorrow for a few more sessions, as well as, let's see, we're going to have a closing keynote and then also a social hour tomorrow. So make sure you don't miss those. I've got all of the participants muted and you should all have your videos off. We also have the chat within Zoom turned off. You'll want to be using Whova and the chat function there to submit your questions, and I will be passing those along to Gage. I think that's pretty much it from me, so I'm going to let Gage take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here, first and foremost. Like Liz said, last session of the day, so if you guys need that caffeine boost, hopefully you have that at home. We can't provide that for you. As Liz also mentioned, this is the affordable housing session, rural affordable housing. And I'm joined by our three panelists, Dan Clark with Iowa Prison Industries, Becky Rozenboom from People's Company, and Craig Armstrong from the City of Newton, Development Specialist. I'm going to let each of them kind of take turns talking a little bit more about themselves, their organizations, and their current roles. Craig, you're first up on my screen, so would you like to start?
I will. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the rural housing session here at the end of the day. Hopefully, as Gage said, you've caffeined up a little bit for our session. Again, my name is Craig Armstrong. I am the Economic Development Specialist for the City of Newton. The city has undertaken a comprehensive housing initiative in the early part of 2014 that is continuing today, morphed over the years, obviously designed to jumpstart a housing market that we knew there was demand for, but was not able to prove to the outside world and certainly to lenders, home builders, and realtors that market truly existed for new homes. My background is way back in the gaslight era, I guess. After college, I was in real estate marketing for quite some time. Ultimately transformed myself into an impresario of motorsports, and for some 20 plus years was in the motorsports entertainment business. Landed in Iowa from originally starting in Portland, Oregon via Georgia to the small town of Newton, Iowa, with the construction of a brand new, at that time, state-of-the-art motorsports entertainment facility called Iowa Speedway in 2006. I spent the next several years as Vice President and General Manager of the facility, leaving for a time to do some consulting work and with a couple of clients out of state, and then returned back to Iowa Speedway for about 2.5 years before being recruited to put my hat in the ring, if you will, for a position being developed by the City of Newton for economic development. And that's where I am today. So I was fortunate enough to be selected, and I've been here for a little over 6 years, going on 7, and have had a great run. It's just been very satisfying work doing something for others and for the community, and it's been great. So I'll leave it at that and we'll move on.
All right, Dan, you're next to me on the screen, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Dan Clark. I'm with Iowa Prison Industries, and about 1.5 years ago in Newton, right near Craig, we started a program called Homes for Iowa Incorporated. That's a 501c3 nonprofit organization comprised of builders, contractors, bankers, realtors, and others in the housing business. And that program is to build affordable houses at the Newton Correctional Facility, and then deliver them in one piece, fully finished, to any point around the state. So this program is based on a similar program in South Dakota that's been going for more than 20 years. And in South Dakota, they built and delivered more than 3,000 of these homes. Each home is 1,200 square feet, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and single story. And they're delivered for $75,000, including the furnace, air conditioning, water heater, cabinetry, and all the doors, windows, siding, roofing. So everything's in there for the new homeowner, except the kitchen appliances, the washer and dryer, and their selection of flooring, carpeting, or pergo, or whatever. So, so far, we've delivered 4 homes to different rural communities, and we have another 14 under construction right now. And those homes are under contract for towns in all 4 corners of the state. So it's been a great program so far, and we're teaching the men there to build homes. So we have apprenticeship programs set up. So all the trades that would be involved in residential construction, electrical and plumbing, HVAC, roofing, drywalling, framing, all those trades are being taught to men who are going to be released. So the program provides affordable homes to mostly rural areas of our state, trains men that maybe not have a skilled trade, and so it helps improve the odds that they're going to be successful when they get out of prison. And then has provided a new pipeline of skilled tradespeople for our state's employers. So, so far, most of the homes have gone into, I'll say, mostly developed neighborhoods or established neighborhoods. But, you know, we have some municipalities that are also looking at, I'll say, small developments and things like that. So anyway, very happy to be here today, and thanks for the invitation, Gage.
Yeah, for sure. And Becky, you're up.
Yeah, as Gage said, I'm Becky Rozenboom. I am with People's Company, but the tie-in for us is our sister company is Groundbreaker Homes. I say that building houses is kind of my side hustle. People's Company is my main gig, but I've been with People's Company and Groundbreaker Homes for about 7 years. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we started getting engaged in the rural housing, kind of affordable housing in some of these areas, outlying the Des Moines metro area, Newton being one of them. We'll probably get into that conversation a little bit further down the road, but you know, seeing that need for new housing, new developments in these smaller towns is something that we've kind of flagged as a necessity outside of the metro area. So we've done Newton and had many conversations with some other communities and have been engaged in there as well, and look forward to what that future is. I know that Governor Reynolds has mentioned this as part of her platform, you know, being able to get that good quality housing in some of these rural areas. So, and otherwise on the day-to-day with what my role is within Groundbreaker is everything from starting the process of getting engaged in the plans and the where we're building, how we're building, the cost, through the finish of, you know, homeowners and warranty. So at pretty much every, you know, step along the way, I'm involved in that home building process.
Thank you, you three. Also for everyone watching, as mentioned at the beginning, feel free to submit questions. We'll address those questions throughout. So whenever you guys feel the need, ask a question and we'll address it right away instead of waiting till the end. I like to keep this as interactive as possible. But for the panelists, my first question for you guys, in 2020, what do we really consider, you know, affordable housing in Iowa to be? How has that changed in the last few years from your guys' experience? And of course, I'm sure different areas, even within the state, probably have a little bit different of a affordable range, but I'd love to hear any of your takes on that, whoever wants to take that first.
Becky, you go ahead. Being the home builder.
I was waiting for you to jump in, Craig. I was like, oh, he's got this one. He's got this one. But, you know, like you just mentioned, Gage, it really probably does depend on where you're at in the state. Obviously, you know, we're seeing prices way different in the larger communities around here in Des Moines. But what affordable housing, I think, to Groundbreaker means when we're having these conversations with these rural areas, you know, like the Newton Housing Development Corporation, the city of Newton. It's what can we make people proud to own that, you know, the threshold isn't, you know, new people can't afford a $300,000 house or a $350,000 house as their entry level home. So that affordable level of, you know, really looking at what the community can afford and what their needs are. And that's really a big part of where you need to start looking at that affordable. What do we consider affordable is, you know, where are we at when we have that conversation? You know, what kind of jobs do we have coming into the community? You know, do we have a manufacturer who's, you know, going to start employing 1,500 people? You know, so all those conversations really come into play when we start looking at what those needs are, I think.
And there's several X factors in affordability for homes. And obviously one of them is the cost of materials. And as Becky knows oh so well, the cost of materials, particularly lumber, imported from Canada, and other construction materials have skyrocketed in price. And that's going to affect the affordability of the home. The other factor, if you will, that is you know, endemic to the area in which the construction is taking place is the cost of land. So land and materials are going to materially affect the cost of a home. So what's affordable in one area may be completely unaffordable in another area. A $250,000 home, for instance, in Newton would be a close to $300,000 home in Ankeny. And it may be over $300,000 in certain areas of West Des Moines. So it really, there's a factor that is kind of, again, specific to the area. Where rural areas have an advantage in that area is that typically their home prices, or their land prices rather, are going to be less than a densely populated metro area. So they're starting with maybe an advantage in that regard. The disadvantages, the further away they are from where home builders are, the more difficult it is to find subcontractors that are willing to go to those areas, A, and then B, of course, again, that X factor of the cost of materials. So, and here again, you know, what is affordable to a young couple, first-time home buyers, recent graduates from college, or beginning their first real jobs after education, may not be at all affordable to somebody without maybe that extra boost of education, and or in a lower income bracket, trying to go after that. Also, that's that same person, regardless, that young couple that is first starting out in their first jobs, maybe looking at somewhere in the $200,000 range, that's affordable to them, but a $300,000 home would not be affordable to them. So some of that's going to be affected by, you know, the area. That, I think, puts us in an advantageous position, being 30 minutes from downtown Des Moines, where commuters, we have many commuters who live in this community, work in Des Moines, but live here in Newton. So we kind of are you know, advantaged in that sense, since none of our land is anywhere close to the price of the land much closer to downtown Newton, or excuse me, to downtown Des Moines. So you know, again, affordability is kind of it's an elusive concept, because it is going to be dependent upon a lender's ability to qualify somebody for a loan, and frankly, some of those factors we've already discussed: land value and materials costs. So I think that puts, and I'm going to kind of segue this into where Dan can pick it up. I think this makes it really imperative that to address a lower end market, the market that would like to be able to be a homeowner but simply cannot afford a $200,000 home. So now we're looking at a 175, 135 to 150 in that range. Now we're talking about a home that an IPI, Iowa Prison Industries, can perhaps produce and put on site, and fully accoutred properly, it will be right in that price range. Wouldn't you agree, Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So the Homes for Iowa program is specifically designed for affordable homes and for those that are income qualified. So one of the restrictions is that the homeowner and all members, the family income in the home has to be below $100,000. So for most, working folks that are with 2 jobs, that's probably doable. The home itself, as I mentioned, is $75,000. Now, by the time you add the basement and driveway, garage, hookups, and so on, we've got people that are selling the homes between $162,000, that's with no garage, up to $187,000, and that's with a 2-car garage attached. So as maybe Becky and Craig both mentioned, a lot of that has to do with the cost of the lot. And in many cases, we're seeing that we're working with people that have lots that are low priced or basically $1 type lots. And in some cases, there'll be down payment assistance or other add-on programs there to make it even more affordable. But that's kind of where we're seeing is that these 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes are going to be fully developed in that $182,000, maybe $195,000 range.
So sub $200,000, basically.
Yes.
Dan, how did that program initially start? And how do you guys decide where homes are going to go?
So the program, as I mentioned, is patterned off the one in South Dakota. And we've had several affordable housing advocates over the years ask me, hey, couldn't you do what South Dakota does? And for several years, I brushed them aside and said, that's crazy. You can't move a 1,200 square foot home, 500 miles or 300 miles or even 100 miles. And so finally we went up there and saw how they do it, saw that it was real. They build and deliver more than 100 homes every year. And then our governor asked us to find a way to do the same kind of program in Iowa. So we did begin. And so that's the beginnings of it. We've had great support from all corners of the state. One of the important things about the Homes for Iowa board that I mentioned is that it does involve stakeholders from both the private sector and the public sector, housing advocates like Habitat for Humanity, but also bankers and realtors, builders, contractors, and so on. So there's been great support for the program. As far as where the homes go, so they're all developed and sold through the councils of government. So each of us is in a certain region for councils of government. Jefferson, for example, is Region 12. And so they work with the individual homeowners and communities to develop and place the homes. Next year, we're planning to build 36. And, we have a lot of interest, so we're pretty sure we'll sell all 36. And then we plan to grow to the point where we're delivering more than 100 homes a year, just like South Dakota.
Wow. And one thing we really need to get into and touch upon with this is you guys have all been a part of witnessing or being an actual part of the town of Newton and its kind of experience and turnaround with more affordable housing and figuring out how to be successful as a smaller community that lost a major part of its workforce with the Maytag plant a few years ago. I guess, Craig, you're probably the good source to kind of start here on talking about where Newton was to where it is now and to where it can go in the future.
2007 was not a good year for Newton. We had obviously Whirlpool had completed its purchase of the Newton plant facilities, and all of the corporate headquarters were moved from Newton to Benton Harbor, Michigan. There were about 1,800 employees that were no longer employed in Newton. A good number of them lived here. The interesting thing was that the population, unlike some communities that lose a Fortune 500 employer like that, we didn't lose an enormous number of people. As a matter of fact, it was a negligible number of people. I mean, before Maytag left, the population was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15.4, and I think it was 15.2 afterwards. So a great number of people just said, you know, look, I'm not moving to Michigan. Thanks very much. But it's terribly demoralizing to a community to lose a major employer. Worse than that, it kind of plants a black eye on that community for everybody outside. They're looking in and they're saying, oh, that poor community in Newton. They must really be in a bad situation. And that's not to say that there wasn't a great deal of economic disruption. I mean, there were a number of businesses in town that were directly affected by that because they were suppliers to the Maytag Corporation, and no longer were they going to be able to do business there. Exacerbated by a program that 60 Minutes did. The CBS program 60 Minutes came out and filmed a segment, and their object was not to demoralize or demean Newton, but really to say, look what this other corporation did to the a corporation that had been for 100 years in this community, and what happened to the community. And of course, they cherry picked their storylines and the people they interviewed. The image, of course, was pretty bleak. Now, it really wasn't great there in 2007, and naturally, the people here in Newton didn't just sit back and with sackcloth and ashes on and ask each other to, whoever the last person out was, to please turn out the lights. I mean, that's just not Iowans, and that's certainly not Newtonians. And we just got busy. Newton Housing Development Corporation, Newton Development Corporation, our Chamber of Commerce. I mean, the community stakeholders came together and said, we've got to do something about this. And they really did. And it began to build. I mean, we began to attract new business to town. It was a diverse industrial base instead of being all in one basket. We were no longer a one-trick pony. The net result of which by 2012, 2013, we'd gained back virtually every job that we had lost with good paying industrial-based jobs. Now we've well exceeded that by this date. But the problem was that after the housing crash of 2008, and after the economy nationally went in the tank, it was kind of the triple whammy, if you will. Everybody still who didn't live in Newton still regarded Newton as kind of that poor, disadvantaged Midwestern town that lost its major employer and kind of imploded. And that just, nothing could have been further from the truth. There was a housing market here, but nobody was building houses here. 2011, there were 0 building permits. I mean, not even anybody wanted to do anything in Newton. So by 2013, the city council realized they had to do something. And that something was ultimately is what became our housing initiative, which was a multifaceted program, which was backed by $3.65 million bonded funds that were GO bonds that are absolutely was necessary for the lifeblood of this community to get flowing again, to prove that there was a housing market. When there are no comparables, when lenders are shying away, when realtors are shying away, when home builders are saying, no, we're not going to build there, it's too far away, it's not a good market, and so on and so on, we had to literally take the bull by the horns and say, all right, we know the market's here, now we're just going to have to prove it by going out and providing incentives for home builders, incentives for home buyers, and comparables by result of those two things for lenders. And the way we did it initially, and I'm going to let Becky kind of take it from here, was why did Groundbreaker Homes choose to come to Newton? Well, it's because we went to them and said, look, we've got some lots and infill lots and subdivisions that are not being filled up, and we know there won't be until somebody just takes the initiative and builds them. So we want you to do this, but we want you to do this and not lose money and not take a huge risk, because that's not what you're in business to do. So we're going to try to take that risk away from you. Becky, I think you would agree that that was the reason that Groundbreaker Homes chose to come to Newton, is that we defined the risk, we contained the risk, and we moved the risk for you.
Correct. I mean, you took all of that away. You know, there was hesitation of, are you going to sit on these houses? How long do you sit on these houses? So working really closely with Craig, Newton Housing Development Corporation, the builder incentives were there, as well as those end user incentives that they put together packages for those first time home buyers. All their community businesses have a package as well that, they're getting free membership to places and lawnmowers and all of this. I mean, they made it exciting to build a house in Newton. I think so. Our first round of housing there, we did these 5 infill lots. They were all right on a cul-de-sac together. 4 out of the 5 were sold, either became like a build to order or sold within just a month or 2. And then one sat just maybe a couple months longer, but they were all sold within that first, 5 months on the market. And it was obvious that there was a need for more, and that it was really obvious to us that Newton had it together. They really did have the thought put together in what they needed to do to make it a successful program for the builder and the home buyer and themselves for a town.
And the net result now is that all of our infill lots are filled up. All of the subdivision infill lots that were available, the vacant lots, have homes on them now. And we've opened up 3 new subdivisions since that point in time. The latest one is our newest one in Northeast Newton that ultimately will have 150 homes on it. The first 30 of Arbor Estates have been opened up, and we just sold, was only on the market about a week, and we sold our first lot. So we're pretty excited about that. It obviously is there is a market here, but it wasn't an overnight success. It wasn't one of those we just turned a switch on and everything happened the way we wanted it to happen. Groundbreaker Homes had to be there to build those 5 homes and sell them relatively quickly, to prove to us and to them and to the lenders and to everybody else that, hey, this is a real thing. This is not just light smears and smoke. Just because we put a guarantee in, we didn't have to exercise that guarantee. The original guarantee was if it doesn't sell within 12 months after the building permit is taken out, we'll buy it from you. We'll buy it back. And I mean, that was a swallow hard, and boy, you're betting on the come on that one, that you truly do believe in your market. But that was the only way to really make it happen. I think you have to start though with an honest assessment of your marketplace. You can't just have bluster and bravado and hope that that is going to result in the same kinds of things that we were able to experience in Newton. We had to assess what's our location right on Interstate 80, 30 minutes to downtown Newton, or downtown Des Moines. I want to say that. From downtown Des Moines to downtown Newton, 30 minutes. And, there were a lot of other, community assets. I mean, Maytag Corporation had left us with wonderful assets like Maytag Park and Maytag Bowl and, and all of their corporate headquarters buildings. And I mean, there's so many assets that we had to take into account and be honest about. These really do matter. And, our educational system is outstanding. Our recreational opportunities, including Iowa Speedway and the 15 parks we have, which is by if my calculation is correct, I think I saw this somewhere, that Newton has more parks per capita than any other city in the United States. So we have a lot of really great assets, but we had to be completely clear-eyed about it. We had some drawbacks, we had some liabilities, and certainly the biggest one was what happened with the Maytag Corporation and losing all of those employees. So that would be my biggest piece of advice to any rural community contemplating doing something on the order of an incentive program to foster new development of residential, whether it's affordable, whether it's just addressing a need and a demand for new homes in the marketplace. Know what it is you're dealing with. Be honest with yourselves and be completely cognizant of your assets and your liabilities, and then make the decision. And when you do make the decision, when you pull the trigger, get behind it, folks. Don't lag behind. If you make that decision to do something, put your money where your mouth is, make it happen, and really rally the community around the cause, which has also been one of the huge assets we've been able to bring to bear here in Newton. Is this community supports what we're doing. had there been pitchforks and torches marching around City Hall from the get-go on when the housing initiative was being discussed, debated, and when it was approved, this wouldn't have gone. I mean, that would have meant the community really did not believe in itself, but it did believe in itself, and it had enough good things going for it to make it work.
Yeah, definitely. And pulling back from that kind of more at a statewide, bigger picture perspective, and either three of you guys can hop in on this one. What do you think the future of affordable housing is in rural Iowa? Is Newton an example for smaller towns in Iowa to follow, or is Newton's experience more of something that really only Newton could have done based off what it had in place already? Why or why not?
Let me respond to that, but then I'd really like Dan to talk about that, because I think, he's got definitely a fast track to answering some of those affordable, even remote community kinds of questions.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't think that Newton's experience is entirely unique. It is obviously our specific experience is unique to us, but the concept again is just assessing what do you have to offer? What is your real market like? And then if you see that there's demand, if you see there's a need that's not being met in that market, it doesn't matter where it is. Now, really remote rural markets are going to be much more difficult to address than we are, because we're right on Interstate 80. We're just 30 minutes to downtown Des Moines. I mean, those are things you can't replicate everywhere. But there's a lot of markets that are rural markets that are just about like ours, maybe smaller, but maybe even a little closer in. I know even in this county, there's some communities that certainly could take a page out of our experience and replicate that. I think, imitation being the sincerest form of flattery, I would be happy to talk to anybody and give details on our experience, both positive and what we would do differently had we the opportunity to do it again with any other community, any other economic developer that would like to get a hold of me. I'm happy to do so, to have that conversation. Very remote rural areas are going to be very difficult to attract Groundbreaker homes type builders to come to them, simply by virtue of the fact that they are really a long ways away from a major metro area or even a secondary metro area. So again, the assessment of your assets and liabilities, an assessment of your demand and need, and a clear-headed and logical answer to that, whatever that might be. It may not be the way we went, and you may take a different tack entirely. But I do think some of the communities that know they need some housing and know it needs to be more affordable, i.e. the sub $200,000 range, need to be talking to Dan Clark in the Iowa Present Industries about that, because I think they can address that. And that's your segue, Dan, to pick up and run.
Yeah, as Craig said, I mean, most of the communities we're talking where they're much smaller, they have more jobs than they have housing. And they don't have the scale to attract a builder, or if a builder is going to come in, very likely that builder is going to put up, much more expensive homes. So for a small community to attract somebody that's going to put up, a tract of affordable homes, really, really difficult right now. Homes for Iowa, we can do that. And, the need for somebody to be able to bring in roofing contractors and so on isn't there because the home is complete. They still have to have local contractors, which is a good thing, come in and pour the foundation and pour the driveway, to do carpentry work and landscaping and put the carpeting down. So it's turned out so far to be a nice blend of taking the ease off of a small community who can't maybe get a builder to come in and build homes in that price range at 200,000 or a little bit lower, but at the same time still support local contractors who can pour a foundation, who can do the electrical and plumbing hookups, landscaping, and so on. So, but that's been our experience, is that most of the towns we're working with are a lot smaller, and they're talking onesie twosies. And really, I think their biggest struggle is they have a lot of jobs, even post-COVID, but definitely pre-COVID. And they just don't have the housing stock that's been, built over the last 30, 40, in some cases 50 years.
Yeah. Becky, I'd love to hear your take on that question too.
What was the actual, like?
That's okay. We've had a couple long answers there.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, I
it.
feel like it's kind of taking a tailspin. Well,
No, that's okay. The question was, what is the future of affordable housing in rural Iowa? Is Newton an example for smaller towns, or is their experience something they could have done?
It does come down to their proximity to the larger cities and being able to get contractors there. To reiterate what Dan said, in Groundbreaker's experience, we probably wouldn't go and do one house an hour away, it's just to work with a housing corporation or something like that and try to build a $225,000 house. That just doesn't make sense to us financially to be able to do that. So when we're looking at the bigger scope of these, we do look at, trying to do multiple homes at a time, 3, 4, 5 houses to make it worth our while. But again, those really rural areas, I'm from far northwest corner of the state. It's really rural up there. It's hard. Sioux City would probably be your biggest, Lamar's, but it's still further north than that. So it's hit or miss. It really is. But again, Newton had the advantage of their location. So I think that's where some of those rural areas are probably going to get it, like your Boone would be probably another really good example of a town that has that advantage, being right on Highway 30, if they really need to start looking at their rural housing objectives as well.
Definitely. Go ahead.
We actually just wrapped up a project with Sheraton as well, where we just went, they had an entire city block there. It had all the infrastructure, needed to just get cleaned up a little bit, but went in there and did 5 houses because they're also another town similar to a Newton where they were getting more jobs than they had, more people there than they were able to get housing for. So they were pulling from, dozen plus counties for what, Hy-Vee had brought in for as far as their warehouse there.
Definitely. Craig, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, something Becky had said earlier about how Groundbreaker Homes was seeking to build homes that people could afford, but were also proud to own. And it kind of brought to mind the subdivision that currently Groundbreaker is working on in Newton, located on what was a privately owned country club golf course, a short course golf course. It was 11 holes. It was about 70 acres, and the city purchased about 4.5 acres and subdivided it, and we developed it, and then contracted with Groundbreaker to come in and build both townhomes, buy-attached townhomes, and single-family homes. And the interesting thing is that what has gone well right from the get-go was the buy-attached homes, which are beautiful homes that are affordable, but something that people are proud to own and to be in. And this subdivision is also located in arguably the nicest, most upscale general area around in West Newton. There are homes in West Newton that are $400,000 and $500,000 homes, not blocks away from this area. These homes are in the the low 200s, and yet they are. They, for most people, would be affordable and something that they really would like to, come home from work and drive in the driveway and be proud that they're coming home. I think, Becky, you'd agree with that.
Yep. Yeah. And that is, also just one of our mottos in general as a home builder. We want to build a good quality home that somebody's proud to live in. And again, the buy-attached homes have done really, really well in Newton. They've done, I don't know if people would, Indianola is also kind of a metro town, but we've done a similar thing in Indianola with these buy-attached townhomes. and they're just embraced really well, just from a newer, like younger price point of a family maybe trying to start, as well as older people coming out of larger homes or off the farm that are looking for a smaller home, which then again you're getting into cycling your real estate. So maybe they're moving up to a 225 or 250 house, but they're freeing up a really nice 175 home in town that can be used as an entry-level home for somebody else as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have a couple questions from the chat here, and then we'll get into kind of specific challenges that this year has probably thrown in front of all of you. But first, with the first chat question is, does tax increment financing have a role to play in rural development workforce housing? Anyone that has an answer that can pick up that and run with it.
Absolutely, yes. And we have used it and continue to use it. Certainly our Fair Meadows North subdivision, the last plat of what was originally a larger 7 plat, now 8 plat subdivision, and the new Arbor Estates subdivision, we used residential TIF as a method of financing. So yes, I think that is absolutely a tool. You have to remember a couple of things about TIF, however. One of them is any TIF district now has a sunset time of 20 years. So you've got the clock starts ticking when you form it, and it begins to function as a TIF district, and 20 years is the time limit. The other thing is that 40% of whatever increment you are creating, whatever that amount of tax dollars collected, has to be then reinvested in workforce or affordable housing. 40% goes to that, which is a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just something to understand and remember that that's a part of the deal in a residential TIF. So, but I guess the short answer to the question is yes, that is a viable tool, and anyone who can engage in that certainly is, I would encourage it.
Cool. Did anyone else have anything else to add to that answer, or did Craig cover it?
Yeah.
Cool. Second question, working with rural towns post-disaster, the need for rapid rehousing options for families is a concern. How might these ideas or plans address post-disaster housing issues?
The post-housing, just in general, the scope of materials and lack of supply in some of these things, it's just an issue across. So I don't know if there's a really good answer right now for disaster. I think there's probably always going to be that lag behind time post-disaster of supply and demand. But right now during this COVID type world, what happened from March to May is everyone freaked out and said, oh no, we're not going to be building as much, or we need to follow government, our guidelines of shutting down or working at 50% occupancy or whatever. So now what just happened is we fell behind, and guess what? We didn't slow down. Nobody slowed down. We've sold more houses this year than we have the last 2 years combined. And we're not the only builder. There's much bigger builders than us in the Des Moines metro area, and they're all having phenomenal years as well. As well as, the price increases. So materials, just lumber alone has gone up 50% from about April, May to September. Things are just back ordered. And so now it's just a really hard time to say, how do you swoop in and get those disaster things taken care of? Because everyone is struggling to get materials just in general. They can't,
that kind of leads
lumber yards, or anything. So there's probably not a good answer in this time frame right now, but I agree there probably does need to be a better resource in those rural areas of where to be able to find contractors and things like that, to be able to help in those situations, especially after like a derecho type event.
Yeah, that kind of really leads into the next question I had, with some added challenges due to an ongoing pandemic and an already challenging landscape. how has the pandemic changed that landscape for each of you? What added obstacles are there? Building material cost, amount of available workers, different delays for different companies or organizations. I'd like to hear from each of you what you guys have had to deal with and how you have overcome that. Becky, you kind of started that, so if you want to continue,
Yes.
start with
so
this.
I mean, it really is the material cost has just gone up. Lumber and also just the time frame. Things that used to take 2 to 4 weeks are now taking 6, 8, 10, 12. Back orders. Appliances are an issue. I don't know if anyone's had to order a new fridge lately. Lighting fixtures, anything you get overseas is definitely has a major lag time as well right now. I just talked to a gentleman today who looks at like the broad market across, nationally as far as lumber prices, and he says they're starting to see things soften up. But I asked him, in reality, are we ever going to come back down to where we ever were? And he shrugs his shoulders, and I said, I just don't see that we will. I mean, it might soften a little bit, but it's no different than when I compared it to when corn prices were $7 and all your inputs and your expenses go along with $7 corn. Well, $7 corn went away a long time ago, but those expenses didn't really soften. So I don't know if we'll ever really come back down. I think it will get down there a little bit, but I think some of these prices are here to stay. Now, hopefully we get caught back up soon. Sounds like a lot of the mills and things like that are just working overtime and just trying to really get caught up. But again, it's just even those manufactured goods, composite decking, we've got some houses up in West Des Moines they're just lagging. And those are probably the biggest challenges that we've seen in the last 5 to 6 months is just the supply and demand and cost increases.
Yeah, Dan, I know you probably have some building material cost experience as well within your program. How has this year kind of affected you guys in your program?
Yeah, Gage, same as Becky said, what you can find is a lot more expensive, and you consistently get bit because something you didn't think could be a problem, like an appliance or lighting, all of a sudden is unavailable. So it's been a real challenge for us. I think as far as our state, there will be a post-COVID at some point, and the demographics haven't gone away. So I think once that kind of blows over, we'll be right back to where we don't have enough available workers. We're all getting older, and when people get older, they don't really feel like climbing up on a roof again, right? Or, working with their back the way they did. So, of course, that's a major part of why we have our program, but we're just a small piece. I do think for our state that, labor is going to continue to be a real struggle to find, for all kinds of builders, all kinds of employers. Even now it is. I mean, I get calls regularly about random calls. Hey, who's getting out of prison that is coming to Waverly or coming to this area or that area? So I do believe that once things kind of smooth out material-wise, mills get going and logistics are repaired, I do think we'll be right back to where we don't have enough skilled people.
Do you guys think that everything that we've kind of gone through this year, do you think that will kind of affect the future affordability of housing in those markets? Will things become less affordable then over time, or will we be able to stabilize and have people still be able to find affordable housing in smaller towns?
Well,
I would just say one thing is that interest rates are at record lows, right? And when they are no longer at record lows, the monthly payment can really zoom up. So between material prices, which I'm sure will show up by the spring in most houses, new builds, if we see interest rates eventually mortgages move back to where they typically have been, 4.5%, 5.5%, then all of a sudden what was affordable for some people will no longer be affordable.
Right.
It's absolutely the case. And I don't think the Fed anytime soon, as a result of some of those economic disruptions, is going to be moving that interest rate up. I can't even imagine that happening. I mean, that would just be the hue and cry over that would be deafening. The other thing, of course, is, again, it's the old supply and demand thing. A lot of lumber and other materials, wood product materials are coming out of Canada. Depending on what happens, some of the federal lands have been locked up for a long, long time that you're not able to harvest, even responsible harvesting that would require, one tree, you got to plant 2 for every one. I mean, there's all kinds of rules and regulations to that. But even with that, they haven't been harvesting nearly enough trees here domestically to satisfy the demand. A lot of those trees can only go into not dimensional lumber, but into ply lumber, plywood and composite lumber products. So all of that, I guess, is when the pandemic is finally abated and when we're back to, we will not go back to the old normal. Okay, if anybody thinks that that's the case, it's just disabuse yourself of that thought. We will never go back to that, but we will go back to a more normal kind of pattern of business and of interaction socially and that kind of thing. We still have huge demand here in this market, in our market of Newton, for new homes and just for homes in general. The demand far exceeds the supply right now. Matter of fact, I mean, realtors are crying for new listings. They just don't have them. And so they can't satisfy that demand. We've got 12 home builders that work in some fashion or form in Newton, and I think that number is going to hold constant and maybe increase some. Our largest employer is TPI Composites, makers of the large blades for the wind energy industry, for the generators. And they, at least 200 of them, their employers on a recent survey, indicated they would love to live in Newton, but simply haven't been able to find something decent and affordable that they could live in. So, there it is, the yin and the yang. I think the demand is going to remain constant and increase. And it's all going to be dependent upon what kind of supply we can deliver for them.
Yeah, so we actually have a little bit less than 10 minutes left. This has kind of flown by. So if anyone in the chat has any final thoughts or questions, go ahead and get those in. But I have a couple other questions as well. How can rural counties or cities be proactive in establishing connections to provide affordable housing in their communities? What do they need to do? And we kind of touched upon this a little bit before. It might not necessarily be as possible for some really small communities opposed to ones like Newton who have a metro area within reach. But how can they be proactive with either your various organizations to help provide those opportunities?
Becky and Dan, I think as builders, you'd be better able to answer that question honestly for communities.
I mean, so from just the builder standpoint, it's a little bit different setup, I know, than Dan has, but I think they just really need to, Craig talked about it earlier, looking honestly at what their community is doing and what their community needs are. Is it $150,000 price point for affordable homes, or are you going to build $220,000 to $250,000 home to open up that marketplace on the bottom so that people can move up? So what's going to happen, with your shift in real estate? What's the, reality of it? And then taking those next proactive steps of, where is the funding coming from? Do we need to have a similar to like a Newton Housing Development Corporation that spearheads this activity, and that's their sole purpose, is finding that niche of that affordable housing and what, really dialing in what is affordable housing for your community. Because I can go in and talk to Jefferson or Sheraton or whoever, but they're going to really know the pulse of, this is what we know, this is our median income. This is who our biggest employer is. This is what we know that their, average salary is. So those are the types of things that they come to us then and say, can you even build a $175,000 house on a free lot? And the answer is probably not. So
yeah, we've seen, some cities are just more able to get themselves together and to figure out all the things that have to be figured out. One thing we have seen is several communities have been creative in their development work, because I do think getting somebody to come in and do development, that is probably near impossible. But if they have, a section of town where they can take old housing stock down and, then have 8 or 10 or 15 lots where they can build new, that can be very successful. And in one case, a small town has taken over a former mobile home park, right? And so it had already water and sewer and everything. And so they're able to do development in that way.
And just to piggyback on that from what Dan is saying, taking down, you don't want to go in and just do one infill lot, because you're pricing for your home and being able to get that to appraise well. And then that just kind of sets off a whole ripple effect of being able to go back in and be able to build successfully and have those comps there to help sustain a new, set of affordable housing. So you don't want to go in and put a new house in, Dan puts a new house in for $160,000, but all the houses are valued around it at $75,000. So to be smart about where that placement of this housing is going is a key thing, and to be able to make it successful.
Yeah, well, we're getting to the last few minutes here, so I'll kind of wrap things up here. First, I want to thank our 3 panelists, Craig, Dan, and Becky, for joining us. And thank you to everyone that was following along and participating today. And thank you to Liz for being a great room host. Couple things as we wrap up here. This hour concludes today's sessions. Tomorrow we will have 2 more sessions, followed by a closing keynote with David Kennedy. And then at noon, we'll have our Big Idea virtual social, where you can join 4 different rooms hosted by Iowa Big, Inclusive ICR, Trees Forever, and Youthport. And of course, thank you to our presenting sponsor, ITC Midwest. Hopefully we'll see you all in the morning, but that wraps up today's sessions. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Gage. Have a great evening, everybody.
You too.